Greetings. Good afternoon. It is high noon plus 1 minute. So technically it is afternoon. Yes, this is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct at noon and 9. Hoping everything is really fine today. We got some special selections, including a special proverb for the day. Proverb of the day is an old American proverb, and it goes like this. You can fool all of the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool mom. I don't think so. Just keep that in mind. You can't fool mom. Mom knows. Okay? And that's for real. I know they're not just talking about my mom. They must be talking about some more moms out there too. But I know how my mom is. And you cannot fool mom. So if you think you're fooling somebody, you might want to think one more time. Because you probably ain't fooling nobody but yourself. All right. Meanwhile, let's move on. We're going to do a story. We're going to do a different story today. We're going to do a little change up this week, especially for Juneteenth, which is in 2 days now. To be on Friday. So, well, 3 days if you count today, but 2 days if you don't. And so we've already dealt with the Juneteenth. We talked about what is Juneteenth on Monday. Tuesday, we talked about the Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black National Anthem. Today, we're going to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. Just what is it? Why is it important? What did it do? And what didn't it do? We're just going to answer a few of those questions. And then we're going to read from a new novel we have over here by Ralph Ellison. So, Emancipation. The Emancipation Proclamation. This is from our book, What is Juneteenth? In case you're wondering where this is coming from. The Emancipation Proclamation was a presidential proclamation, an executive order issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. In a single stroke, it changed the legal status as recognized by the United States government of 3 million slaves in the designated areas of the South, from slave to free. So if you were a slave and happened to be in an area not designated, guess what? You were still a slave. It had the practical effect that as soon as a slave escaped from the control of the Confederate government, by running away or through advances of federal troops, the slave became legally free. Eventually, it reached and liberated all of the designated slaves. It was issued as a war measure during the American Civil War, directed to all of the areas in rebellion and all segments of the executive branch, including the Army and Navy of the United States. It proclaimed the freedom of slaves in the 10 states that were still in rebellion because it was issued under the president's war powers. It necessarily excluded areas not in rebellion. It applied to more than 3 million of the 4 million slaves in the U.S. at that time. So in other words, 1 million slaves were still not given their freedom by this Emancipation Proclamation. And if you were still under the control of the Confederates, you were still a slave unless you could escape or the Union Army came into your area and took over the area. Let's see. And then one more thing here. The proclamation was based on it. Yeah, the proclamation was based on the president's constitutional authority as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. It was not a law passed by Congress. The proclamation also ordered that suitable persons among those freed could be enrolled into the paid service of United States forces, and ordered the Union Army and all segments of the executive branch to recognize and maintain the freedom of the ex-slaves. The proclamation did not compensate the owners, it did not outlaw slavery, and did not grant citizenship to the ex-slaves called freedmen. It did not grant citizenship to the ex-slaves called freedmen. It made the eradication of slavery an explicit war goal, in addition to the goal of reuniting the Union. And that's what the Emancipation Proclamation was all about. Now, in the coming days, we will also read about we'll also read something about the 13th Amendment, and we'll also read about, what was the other one in there? There's one more. The 13th Amendment, and we'll read about the 13th Amendment, Emancipation Day. Okay? The 13th Amendment and Emancipation Day, which is a different day from other than Juneteenth. Okay? But meanwhile, let's go ahead and take a look at Juneteenth, the other novel that Ralph Ellison wrote. Now, he did a lot of other writings, but he only wrote two novels. One was Juneteenth. The other was The Invisible Man, which was an excellent book. I actually got to read that whole book. This one I have not read yet, but it has an interesting summary in the overleaf over here. So let's start off with chapter 1. We're not going to read this whole book, but we're going to read some portions of the book just to give you an idea of what's in here. 2 days before the shooting, a chartered plane load of Southern Negroes swooped down upon the District of Columbia and attempted to see the senator. They were all quite elderly, old ladies dressed in little white caps and white uniforms made of surplus nylon parachute material, and men dressed in neat but old-fashioned blue suits, wearing wide-brimmed, deep-crowned Panama hats, which in the senator's walnut-paneled reception room now they held with a grave ceremonial air. Solemn, uncommunicative, and quietly insistent, they were led by a huge, distinguished-looking old fellow who on the day of the chaotic event was to prove himself, his age notwithstanding, an extraordinarily powerful man, tall and broad and of an easy dignity. This was the Reverend A.Z. Hickman, better known as one of the old ladies proudly informed the senator's secretary as God's trombone. This, however, was about all they were willing to explain. 44 in number, the women with their fans and satchels and picnic baskets, and the men carrying new blue airline take-on bags. Airline take-on bags? Okay, we have to check the time period on this one. They listened intently while Reverend Hickman did their talking. Ma'am, Hickman said, his voice deep and resonant as he nodded toward the door of the senator's private office. You just tell the senator that Hickman has arrived. When he hears who's out here, he'll know it's important and he'll want to see us. But I've told you that the senator isn't available, the secretary said. Just what is your business? Who are you anyway? Are you his constituents? Constituents? Suddenly the old man smiled. No, miss. He said the senator doesn't even have anybody like us in his state. We're from down where we're among the counted, but not among the herd. Then why are you coming here? She said. What is your business? He'll tell you, ma'am. He'll tell you. Hickman said, he'll know who we are. All you have to do is tell him that we have arrived. The secretary, a young Mississippian, sighed. Obviously, these were Southern Negroes of a type she had known all her life, and old ones. Yet instead of being already in herd-like movement toward the door, they were calmly waiting as though she hadn't said a word. And now she had a suspicion that for all their staring eyes, she actually didn't exist for them. How about that? They just stood there, now looking oddly like a delegation of Asians who had lost their interpreter along the way and were trying to tell her something which she had no interest in hearing. Through this old man, who himself did not know the language, suddenly they no longer seemed familiar, and a feeling of dreamlike incongruity came over her. They were so many that she could no longer see the large abstract paintings hung along the paneled wall, nor the framed facsimiles of state documents which hung above a bust of Vice President Calhoun. Some of the old women were calmly plying their palm leaf fans as though in serene defiance of the droning air conditioner. Yet she could see no trace of impertinence in their eyes, nor any of the anger which the senator usually aroused in members of their group. Instead, they seemed resigned, like people embarked upon a difficult journey who were already far beyond the point of no return. Her uneasiness grew. Then she blotted out the others by focusing her eyes narrowly upon their leader. And when she spoke again, her voice took on a nervous edge. "I've told you that the senator isn't here," she said, "and you must realize that he is a busy man who can only see people by appointment." "We know, ma'am," Hickman said. "But you don't just walk in here and expect to see him on a moment's notice." "We understand that, ma'am," Hickman said, looking mildly into her eyes, his close-cut white head tilted to one side. "But this is something that developed of a sudden. Couldn't you reach him by long distance? We'd pay the charges, and I don't even have to talk." "Miss, you can do the talking. All you have to say is that we have arrived." "I'm afraid this is impossible," she said. The very evenness of the old man's voice made her feel uncomfortably young. And now, deciding that she had exhausted all the tried and true techniques her region had worked out, short of violence, for getting quickly rid of Negroes, the secretary lost her patience and telephoned for a guard. They left as quietly as they had appeared, the old minister waiting behind until the last had stepped into the hallway. Then he turned and she saw his full height framed by the doorway as the others arranged themselves beyond him in the hall. "You're really making a mistake, miss," he said. "The senator knows us, and..." We'll be back tomorrow with some more from the novel Juneteenth. Introduce you to something new that you never heard of before. That's why you come here every day. And if you're not coming here every day, I'm not really sure why you're not coming here every day. You need to be here every single day. We only ask for 10, not more than 15 minutes of your time. And what we offer in return is the ability to time travel. That's right. We will allow you to travel through time and space. So when you get back to your work, whatever it may be, you will be able to win the race because you'll be able to keep up the pace. Steady as she goes, Captain. That's what we're talking about. We're just trying to help you make it happen. Meanwhile, this is Doc Ock signing off. Remember, if you're looking at us on the YouTube, not the boob tube, the YouTube, go ahead and subscribe below. If you're looking at us on Facebook, then please make sure to give us a like instead of a strike and give us a share. Show everybody that you really do care. That's what we'd like everybody to do today. If you don't mind, we'd appreciate it very much. Thank you. And meanwhile, we'll be here again tonight at 9 o'clock and back here again tomorrow at when? Noon. Because this is Doc Ock at noon and 9.